Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to a brand new series. So the title of the series is SQL for Data Analysts and Data Scientists. So the basics, or rather the background why I decided to create this series is I currently work in an IT consulting company and we are recruiting many new people for like a data scientist or data engineer or data analyst or a data visualization specialist. And I see many of these people have decent understanding of like Python, maybe of R, of certain visualization tools, and this is at a really good level. However, where I see many struggles is with their SQL knowledge. While this is really necessary, this is something you have to know, in my opinion, to be an efficient data analyst, an efficient data scientist, especially if you want to work in the consulting firm where you actually don't know what you'll do on your next project. So you sort of have to be ready, right? And the fact that you don't know SQL, so you don't know how to access the database where your data is that you want to work with, it is a very difficult, very hard limiting factor. And this is basically why I decided to record such a video series where I will go over all the necessary topics that, in my opinion, are necessary for someone who wants to use the data, right? So for someone who wants to be a data analyst or a data scientist. Now, if you want to be a data engineer and you are just getting started, this course is also great for you. However, to be an efficient data engineer, to be an efficient ETL developer, so if you want to basically build the databases, SQL databases, you need more knowledge than what we are going to cover here. I may touch on some of the most or more advanced topic in certain sections. However, in general, this course is tailored towards data analysts and data scientists. So people who want to really use the data and not to who want to build the databases. Okay, so this is it. What you can currently see on the screen is a short agenda. Maybe I'll make it a little bit, oopsie daisies. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. So what we are going to cover is, first I will introduce very briefly, few minutes, the concepts, the main concepts, and what SQL is. Then we are going to go over the environment setup. We are going to talk about selects, joins, subqueries, create table statements, views, some data manipulation language statements, and then we will go to the slightly more advanced section, which are the performance optimization basics. However, here I think that especially when working with huge or big data sets, it's necessary to know the basics of how you should access the data. Okay, so this is the agenda for our course. I don't know how exactly the videos are going to be structured at this point in time. I'll try to cover at least one section in one video, but maybe we'll combine some of them. So for example, I think in the current video, we will do the introduction, and then we'll also go over the environment setup. So where we will install all the necessary tools for this course. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. This is a language that is used to work, so basically to build, access, and change data in relational databases. So basically, this is where the data is stored in a tabular form, so basically in tables, and we use then SQL to change this data and to access this data that we want to see. Now, SQL is standardized by ISO and ANSI. However, there are small differences between different DBMSs. So a name you have probably heard is Oracle. This is what we'll be using in this series of tutorials. So far, at the point in time of recording this video, Oracle is probably the most used DBMS. However, others are quickly catching up. So there are small differences. So Postgres will have its own differences. DB2 will have its own differences. MySQL will have its own differences. However, in the scope of this course, these differences will be really small, maybe even non-existent. Once you go into a little bit more advanced topics like procedural languages, then the differences really do show. And this is where you actually have to know and have to differentiate between different DBMSs. for the standard that we'll cover in this course, so we'll be working with Oracle, but if you then will have to work with like a Postgres or MySQL or any other DB standard DBMS, popular DBMS, then it will not be different. Maybe there will be some small differences that you'll be able to Google very quick, but this should not be an issue. Okay, so this is for the introduction. I hope that you sort of understand what we'll be doing and understand like why you need it, right? So if you are a data analyst and you want to run some analysis on the data, you first need to retrieve it. If you're a data scientist, you absolutely need to retrieve your data. I mean, in a real professional work setup, nobody is going to send you CSV files. This is not very efficient way of doing it, in my opinion. It's way easier to just know SQL. Even if you want to use like Python language to access your data, you still need to or should know a little bit of SQL, even if you are using an ORM. But okay, let's go back on track. So what we'll do next is we'll go over our environment setup. And our environment setup will be using Oracle, and then we'll be using Sql Developer. So we'll be using Sql Developer to access or to write our SQL statements that they will then send to the database and where we will see the results. For environment setup, we need to download Oracle. Now you can use a link in the description, or you can just Google for Oracle Express Edition download, and eventually you should find a page like this. So we will be using 21C version. This doesn't really matter. So if you are using following the tutorial close to the release date, perhaps makes sense to use the same version. But if you are following it somewhere in the future, it doesn't really matter for us. We are just working with the standard, and the standard should not change. Now, Express Edition is just a free edition of Oracle compared to their Enterprise Edition, which is actually for not enterprises, and it's actually pretty pricey. Okay, so you select your operating system and you just click download and you wait for it to finish downloading, and when it finishes downloading, we will proceed. So once it finishes downloading and you unpack the folder, you should see something like this. Now what you need to do is click on setup, allow it to make changes to your system. Here you have to wait a little bit, and now you should see an installer like this, and you just follow all the steps here. You accept the license agreement. You can maybe change a path if you want. And here it's very important. You need to insert the password, 2 times the same password, and you need to actually remember it. Sorry, for some reason the typing here is super slow. Oh, it's better. Okay, and then you click next, and then you click install. I'll actually see you once it is installed. It has finished installing. Now we are done with the database. So what we do still need is we need some kind of tool to connect to our database. Oracle comes with already a tool in a package that you can use to connect to the database. It's called SQL Plus. So you just search for SQL Plus, you should have it. When you start it, you should see something like this. Now the username, we say system. The password, we say the password that you have entered during the installation. And now we can see that we are connected to our database. So just to check if you are surely corrected, let's write select and then star from dual. And then let's place a semicolon at the end and let's press enter. If you see something similar, this means that everything has gone right and you have the database installed. Now we could use this tool, no problem. The problem is it's not very convenient. So we don't see our tables here, we don't see what is in the database, and we can't really conveniently write our scripts here. Therefore, we will install a tool, a free tool from Oracle called Sql Developer that is much more advanced and where we'll be able to work much more conveniently. To download Sql Developer, you can just Google for Sql Developer download, or you can use the link in the description. Now, if you have JDK 8 installed, you can use the second link, and you're using Windows, that is. But if you do not have a GTK 8 or you have no idea what I'm talking about, just use the first link, download it. So here only, actually in both of the options, Oracle will force you to log in. So you need to set up an account here, but the process is very standard, so we'll not go over it. Just download it and we'll see each other once the download has finished. There you can use it straight away. You don't even have to install it. Once the download finishes and you unpack the file, you should see something like this. Now you just click the SQL Developer and then it will take a while to load. And I will see you with SQL Developer already open. Once it opens, this is something you should see. So what we will do now is we'll connect to our database. In order to do that, we click on the plus here and we have this window. Let's just say a name. So name is just a name of the connection. It can be whatever. Let's just say localhost. Now the username is the same username that we have used when we were connecting using the SQL Plus, so system. And here you insert or input the same password and leave everything else the same. So here we can see that by default we have the hostname localhost and the port 1521. So if you remember the installation screen, so the screen we got after we installed Oracle, it was exactly saying to us that, hey, we have the host name that we have created a database on your local host on port 1521. So let's just say test and we can see status success. Therefore, it means that we can connect to our database. So just to verify that we are connected, let's just do the same thing we did in the SQL Plus. Let's say select star from dual and then semicolon. And then you press in SQL Developer, you can press Ctrl plus Enter to run the file. And we can see that we have selected something. This means that we are connected. Okay, let's remove this. Now what we need to do is, unfortunately, Oracle is an advanced DBMS. The upside is you can do amazing things with this. The downside is if you just want to do basic things as we want to do, you need to run some configuration. And I will just go with you through the steps. More or less what we'll be doing is we'll be setting up a new user and some test data that we'll be using over the course of these videos. But I'm not going to explain in detail what we do, especially once it comes to the switching from like different types of databases that we'll be doing. So just follow along and then we'll start in the next video actually going step by step from the basics through all of this. And if you want to know more about the commands that we'll be doing, unfortunately, this is not part of this course. I would need to do like a database administrator tutorial in order to explain this. So this is still far to go. So first thing we need to do is we need to switch from the sort of master database to like something on Oracle called pluggable database. Doesn't really matter what that means. What you have to do is say select star from DBA underscore PDBS and then a semicolon at the end. You should get 2 rows. You take the first one, which says XEPDB1, you copy this. And then now what you do is you say alter session set container equals to this name. You just paste it and then you mark this and click run. And you should get here a message saying session altered. Just to confirm, you say show con underscore name and then a semicolon, you mark it, you run it with a Ctrl plus Enter, and you should see con name XEPDB1. If you have done everything correctly, this should be like this. Okay, then we will create a new user. So now we are logged in with the system user. If you work like in a company with an SQL database, you will never get a system user privileges, especially if it's your first time working with a database. But also if you are a DBA, you should not. So a database administrator, you should not get it. So basically what you need to do is you say create user. And now you give here the username, can be whatever, just remember it. For me, it will be Tomek Q. and then identified by, and now you say your password, right? So I'll just say password. Maybe password is a keyword, so I will say Tomek password. Okay. Now, once again, you mark this, you say Ctrl+Enter, and you should get a message that a user created. Okay, now we created the user, but in a database, you need to add privileges to the user. So we just say grant connect resource DBA to Tomek Q. And then, so Tomek Q is your username. Here you have to insert your username. And then you say Control plus, you mark this and say Control+Enter to execute it. Okay, our grants succeeded. Now what we need to do is we need to adjust our connection here so that by default we connect to the database that we want to connect. Okay, so let's do that now. So from here, what you need to do, as I will copy the password, is you go right here, you go to properties, and now what you do is here you insert your username. Here you insert your password and you save the password. In the service name, you say xepdb1. So this is the value that we have here. And now you say test. And now if this is a success, you click save. That's first thing. So we adjust the connection here and you say connect. And now every time we'll connect to the correct database. So here I will close it and you will find the files with these settings in the description of the video. Next step, and actually the last step in this video, will set up some basic table with some basic data that we'll have and that we'll be able to use. Therefore, you also have a file in the video description. Just download it and copy the contents of the file. You can open the file with any text editor you want. It can be Notepad. And just copy the contents of the file, paste it here and execute it. Don't worry about anything else. We will go through all the statements that are here at some point in this tutorial. But for now, we'll start from something a little bit more basic. But in order to show you that, I need to have just a table and some data so we can select this data and talk about how you structure the selects. Okay, so I will also do this. I will just make the copy and then I will see you once I have all of this here. What I have here is the file that first creates our testing table and then insert a number of rows into it. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to understand for now what it does here. We will get to this in the next videos. For now, you just select everything, paste it here and press F5 and everything should be created successful and rows should be inserted. You can verify it if you just click refresh here. Here a table called people should appear. You open it and you see some columns and some data. Okay. So that's it for this episode. So we have successfully completed our setup now, and we are ready to start really learning SQL. In the next episode, we'll take a look at perhaps the most important statement in all SQL, which is the select statement. But for now, I would like to thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.